Child labor and expectation refers to situations where children are made to work in conditions that are harmful to their physical, mental, social, or educational development. Now, this involves forcing or pressuring children to perform tasks that deprive them of their childhood, dignity, and the opportunity to attend school. Now, globally, millions of children are engaged in various forms of labor, including domestic work, which is rampant in Nigeria, street hawking, mining, agriculture, and factory work. Now, in many cases, they work long hours for little or no pay, often in unsafe environment. Now, poverty, lack of access to education, and weak enforcement of the child protection laws are key factors in driving this problem. Child exploitation goes beyond labor to include trafficking, sexual abuse, and forced begging, where children are used for the benefit or profit of others. Now, such acts violate children's fundamental rights as enshrined in international conventions like the United Nations Convention on the Rights of a Child and International Labour Organization conventions. You're welcome to Insight Today. I am Jumai Manson. Don't go anywhere. The program continues shortly with my guests. Stay tuned. All right, you're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Insight Today on Global Television. And today I'm looking at a very sensitive issue. People might wonder what this is all about, but it's all about the exploitation of children. And I am not doing it alone today. And of course, we know that child labor and exploitation is a very sensitive issue. And I am here with a very important personality, no other person than Mariam M. Abdul. She is the CEO of a Children and Child's Right Foundation. It's an NGO, and she is here on the program with me today. Hello, Mariam. How are you doing today? Hello, Mariam. Can you hear me? Hello, Mariam. I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you too.
All right. It's great to have you on the program. And thank you so much for being on the program Insight Today. And of course, like I mentioned before, Mariam M. Abdul, she is the Executive Director, Women and Child Rights and Empowerment Foundation. You're welcome to the program today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what's your brief when it comes to child labor and exploitation? What's that all about?
So child labor and exploitation is something that is cruel and unconscionable, and it takes place every day in Nigeria. The best example that comes to mind is child hawking on the street. You notice the ages of the children are below 18. And then, of course, if you look at the Almajiri system, most of the children are under 18. So these are types of child labor that we see in Nigeria. And then the most annoying and saddest ones are the ones that they bring from the villages to be nannies to children or domestic staff. People look at them as less than human or children that are not like our own children. And so these are forms of child labor, examples of the types that we can see. But child labor, the concept of it itself, is the employment of a child under 12 years old or 18 years old, used for tasks that are above their means. So for instance, if you have a 12, 13 or 14-year-old that's lifting heavy machinery, working in a factory, It's a form of abuse, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
If you have a child that's below the age of 18 and is doing some very, very tedious tasks, like even farming for prolonged hours, it becomes a form of abuse. So these and many other examples are types of child labor, child labor.
And of course, exploitation.
Yes.
Let's bring it home to Nigeria now when it comes to child labor and exploitation, when it comes to children being helps, hawking on the streets and all of that. How can we address that? How can we really address it basically?
At its highest form, it's illegal. It's illegal. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, has enshrined the rights of every individual, including children. The right to life, the right to, so many rights that it's been given in Chapter 4 of the Constitution. And that's the highest, or what they call the ground norm. That's the highest law of the land. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look at the Labor Act in Nigeria, it has enshrined the age that a child is supposed to not do certain labor. Mm-hmm. But the problem with the Labor Act is that it gives the age at 12 years old. At 12 years old, being the minimum age for child labor. But the Child Rights Act of 2003 has said that the child has to be from that 12 to 18 at least for the child to do certain tasks. So it now defines the kinds of tasks that a child can do. So like I mentioned, if it is something that's beyond their physical capability, it's illegal. It has to be something that is light, like domestic chores, even farming, horticultural or agricultural forms of labor are permissible. But once the child exceeds a certain type of task, it becomes illegal. So it's good for everybody to understand the legality of child labor. Before they pluck somebody from the village and bring to their house, it's illegal, and they can be arrested and thrown in prison.
Well, talking about plucking someone from the village and bringing them into town as domestic workers, street hawkers, and all of that. But what if there is consent from the parents? The parents are the ones that give consent and they feel it is okay to allow their child come work in a particular home or street hawk to a particular family because of the poverty rate in which the family is facing. So if there's consent, so does that overrule whether it's legal or not?
Okay, that's a brilliant question. If Mrs. X and Mr. X give their child baby X to family Y now, for instance, they've consented to the child looking after a baby. That family is going to explain to the family Y that, oh, do you know what? You're going to come and look after this baby, and we're going to feed you, we're going to send you to school, we're going to do this and this and that for you. And highlight all the things that they said they're going to do. They've consented to that.
Yes.
But we both know that most often than not, when they go to that family, one, some families don't even feed them to even begin with. Two, they do not do what they said they're going to do when they get there. Some of them work for as long as Oga and Madam have gone to office and come back until night. They're working and they're on their feet. Children need to sleep. These children I'm talking about are children from ages 7 to like 15. Those are the kinds that they bring from the village, right? Within that 7 to 15, they need to sleep, they need to eat. And then the work that they're doing has to be minimal. Like I said, light chores, like the Labor Act has specified, a 12-year-old. So that consent is not a blanket consent that they're giving for you to beat their child. As you know, they beat them, they maltreat them. Some of them horsewhip them. Some of them, as I said, do not feed them. And then they do work that exceeds what they promised their parents that they would do. However, even if they've given consent, let us say the father and mother said, beat my child from morning till night.
If he does wrong, that is.
Yes, whatever it is, even if they said, let my child carry 5 blocks of cement from here to thy kingdom come, that's the consent the family is giving. It's still illegal when you do it. The consent is of no consequence. Why? Because the Labor Act and the Child Rights Act and the Constitution have, and the Criminal Code and the Penal Code have all made it illegal.
Okay.
So consent is of no consequence in this scenario.
I
So
don't.
let me just give you
Okay. No,
another
go ahead.
example.
Okay.
Theft, is it not illegal? Rape, is it not illegal?
Yes, it is.
So let us say somebody has said, oh, I consent to you doing XYZ thing. It's still an illegal thing you're doing. I give you the key to my car to go to the grocery store and you take it and go somewhere else and then it's gone. Have I consented to you driving it to wherever? So these are the technicalities that come from, the question you've asked.
Yes, it is. It's somehow complicated. But I want to ask you a question, Barrister Mariam Abdul. Now, in a situation whereby there is breach of this particular agreement between Mr. X and Mrs. X and child X by the individuals in which they are handing over their child to. Now, the parents who are, they're poor, how do they go about seeking justice?
To begin with, they don't even know about the illegality.
Exactly.
Many of these things. But in response to what you've said, there's the police, isn't there? There's the Meangwa. They have their own community, quote unquote, community regulations and who they can meet. So in these cases, most often than not, you hear maybe the Meangwa has brought a child to the police station on behalf of a parent. Or in the absence of a guardian or a parent, the Meangwa has been contacted by somebody, maybe a neighbor or a good Samaritan, and says, oh, I hear a lot of commotion happening in this house, and this child has been used as so thing. And so the Meangwa has, or even local government chair people or women leaders or youth leaders, they have their own way of reporting these matters. Now, in the absence of that, let's say they're not in a community, they're in an estate or in the upwardly mobile areas where they reside, for instance, most of the time you have somebody who has heard or has seen, or even the child runs away. There's a National Human Rights Commission who hear these cases daily. And I've mentioned the police as well.
Yes, you have.
So at the very least, these institutions now get lawyers from the public prosecutor's offices or places like that to try the case. And it's not taken lightly. These cases are not taken lightly. If anybody reports to National Human Rights Commission, it's a very, very, they really don't take it lightly. So the mechanisms are in place. And of course, I've mentioned some laws. I mentioned 3 different laws, and then you also mentioned in your introduction the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Nigeria actually borrowed some sections from. And then there are many, many policies out there. So most of the time it's just advocacy and sensitization for them, like what we're doing now.
Now, as a lawyer, Barrister Mariam M. Abdul, and of course, you are the Executive Director, Women and Child Rights and Empowerment Foundation. This is a menace in our society, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And we know that this menace is not going away anytime soon because a lot of individuals who are parents in low areas with poverty states, they cannot afford 1 or 2 things when it comes to healthcare and all of that. And this is their means of survival by giving out their children who are from 7 to 15 to work and bring back funds home at a later time. How can we curb or nip this particular menace in the bud?
We need to speak to parents and guardians and whoever is looking after children to understand that the quick solution to everything is not sending them out to work for people in their homes. I think by now many people have read and have seen, even at the rural areas, what happens to some of these children. 1. 2, why are parents or guardians hiding under the shade of sending their children out to hawk? Every child came from somewhere now. They're selling granite on their head, selling pure water. I think somebody mounted that thing on their head and gave them a price that they're supposed to sell it. So these irresponsible people should do it themselves. I think they're adults. There's no excuse. Ignorantia juris non excusat. There's no excuse. So all they have to do is do the thing themselves. Hawk or go to the market from 9 to whatever time and do the work. Why are they sending children up and down with heavy load to do certain things on bare feet most of the time? You know? So it's unconscionable and they have no excuse anymore. Why are you sending children to hawk? The Almajiri system also is another crowd that has become something else. People say that they don't know. They always say, oh, I thought I was giving my child out to a malam to help. You know the child is going to hawk or going to beg on the streets. Worst case, again, is those leading the visually impaired or, you know, the paralyzed people. These are children doing it, if you notice. They're pushing them on wheelchairs and on all sorts of things. And then you hide around and say you don't know that that's what they're doing. We need to take responsibility and ownership for these things. I think it's high time that we understand and analyze the situation. Is getting worse. These are out of school children. These children are given to us as a trust, whether they're orphans or whatever they are. They need a lot of protection and a lot of reassurance.
And it takes you and I to spread that awareness, right?
Yes, exactly.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Barrister Mariam M. Abdul. Of course, she is the Executive Director, Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation. Thank you so much for being a part of Insight today and enlightening us on issues surrounding child labor and exploitation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
All right, before we go on a very quick break, I would like to say addressing child labor and exploitation requires a collective effort through quality education, poverty reduction, strict law enforcement, social protection programs, and public awareness to ensure every child enjoys a safe, nurturing, and empowering environment. Let's go on a very quick break. Insight Today continues shortly. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. And if you're just tuning in, this is Insight Today on Global Television. And I had a very important guest with me on the program, and all the way from Kaduna State. And she is Barrister Mariam M. Abdul. And she is the Executive Director, Women and Children's Rights and Empowerment Foundation. And she laid a very strong foundation when it comes to child labor and exploitation. Like I mentioned before, child labor and exploitation, these are situations, like I'm going to quickly give a rundown because for individuals who are just joining in. So let us really understand what Mariam said. And it's all about situations where children engage in work that deprives them of their childhood, education, health, and overall development. Now, sometimes these jobs are hazardous. They are forced labor, child trafficking, street hawking, domestic servitude, and other forms of abuse where children are exploited for economic gain or survival. Now, let's look at the causes of child labor and exploitation. I mentioned poverty. Now, many families, they depend on their children's income to survive, forcing them to work instead of school. And sometimes these families often give out their children to other families to go through all these hard labor, which is very sad. Now, lack of access to education. When schooling is expensive, unbelievably, or undervalued, children are pushed into labor. Yes, they are. Unemployment of parents without stable income often send their children to work to support their household, not minding their age. Mariam said from 7 to 15, these are the group of children that are pushed into this forceful child labor and exploitation by other individuals. Cultural practices and beliefs. Now, in some communities, it is seen as normal for children to contribute economically from a very young age. And sometimes when we have weak legal enforcement, even where law exists, poor implementation allows children labor and trafficking to continue. Conflicts and displacement. Children in war-torn or disaster-affected areas are more liable to exploitation. Demand for cheap labor. industries seeking low-cost labor exploit children, especially in informal sectors like mining, agriculture, and domestic work. Now, with all of these things, we sit back and we say some of the effects of child labor and exploitation. One, we can say health problems. Exposure to all of these hard, hazardous conditions causes injuries, illnesses, and long-term disabilities. Sometimes the children are into all of these hard labor, not knowing the long-term effect it will have on them when they are older. Now, loss of education. Working children often drop out of school, limiting their future opportunities. It's so sad that all their age mates, or will I say their peers, are in school. They are limited from future opportunities. Now, psychological trauma. Exploited children may suffer from depression, fear, anxiety, or low self-esteem. Now, perpetration of poverty without education or skill. Now, child laborers grow into adults who remain poor, continuing the cycle. And if you're a parent listening, yes, it's a continued cycle. It's better for parents to strive, try as much as they can to break away from this cycle of poverty and not introducing their children into that kind of life. It doesn't matter what the parent is going through, you can actually strive to make ends meet. Very important. Now, violation of human rights. Now, child labor denies children their right to safety, education, and development. Not even talking about social instability, widespread child exploitation, weakens social and economic development in communities. Now, if you're wondering, Jumai Manson, what are the solutions to child labor and exploitation? Maria mentioned a few, but I would say quality and free education. Of course, the government, when it comes to free education, is putting in so much effort to ensure accessible, affordable, and compulsory schooling for all children. Poverty reduction programs supporting low-income families through empowerment schemes, social welfare, job creation can reduce reliance on child labor. Now, talking about including the Renewed Hope agenda also comes in to reduce poverty, supporting that low-income families. Now, strong legal framework, enforcing laws against child labor, trafficking, and exploitation with strict penalties for offenders. Public awareness campaign, educating you and I, communities about dangers of child labor and the benefits of education. Now, support the vulnerable families, providing scholarships, free feeding programs, and social support to keep children in school, to keep children out of the harms and dangers of society. Partnership, advocacy, collaboration among government, NGOs, communities, and international organizations to end child exploitation. Now, trying to nip this particular hazard in the bud. Rehabilitation and reintegration, rescuing child laborers and providing counseling, education, and skills training to rebuild their lives. A sigh of relief. With all of these things put in place, I'm sure it will go a long way. It might not actually take this menace out of society, but it will at least nip it in the bud and go a long way to reduce it. Now, to parents out there, child labor and exploitation remains serious social challenges that rob millions of children of their future. Now, combating it requires collective responsibility from parents, communities, governance, government, and international community to ensure that every child grows up in a safe, nurturing environment where their rights, their dreams, their hopes, potentials are fully protected. Thank you all so much for being a part of Insight today. I am Jumai Manson. Have an amazing day ahead. Bye-bye.